There's a clip on YouTube that has been watched over 40 million times. It's 2 minutes long. Nothing explodes in it. Nobody cries. No one makes a confession. It's just a woman sitting across from another woman saying 5 words. That's not the truth, Ellen. And somehow, after 19 years, over 4,000 episodes, and an empire built entirely on the promise of kindness, those 5 words were the beginning of the end. But here's what's strange. Nobody realized it at the time. Let's start with what everyone agreed on. For nearly 2 decades, Ellen DeGeneres was considered one of the safest bets in American entertainment. Not just popular. Safe. She was the host you brought your grandmother to see tape. The show you watched during a bad week when you needed to believe the world could be cheerful. The brand that closed every single episode, 4,000 of them, with the same 4 words: be kind to one another. For 19 years, Ellen ended every show with that line. The phrase became her entire brand identity, merchandised on t-shirts, mugs, promotional materials. Think about that for a moment. For words, 19 years. On merchandise. On a mask she wore during a pandemic. That's not a catchphrase. That's a contract with an audience. And contracts, when broken, don't disappear quietly. Here is a question worth sitting with. When someone tells you, every single day, to be kind, what happens the moment you see them being unkind? Not just disappointment. Something stranger. You start rewinding. You go back through every moment you witnessed. You rewatch old clips with new eyes. And suddenly, things that seemed like harmless television start to look different. Not because the clips changed, because you changed. When the ultimate moral of the Ellen DeGeneres story is written, it may include counsel to be careful about mantras. Be kind is an impossible bar for anyone to consistently meet or exceed. That's the architecture of her collapse. She didn't just build a career. She built a measuring stick, and then held it up to herself, every day, in front of millions of people. The clips were always there, hiding in plain sight, in the YouTube archives, in the daytime television vaults. Nobody was looking yet. Mariah Carey came on the show in 2008. At the time, pregnancy rumors about her were circulating. She hadn't confirmed anything. She hadn't said a word publicly. To try and get the breaking news out of her guest, Ellen pressured Mariah into drinking some champagne on air to prove whether she was expecting or not. Carey clearly did not want to go through with the charade. Watch the clip now, Carey's eyes. The way she hesitates. The way she keeps trying to redirect the conversation, and the way Ellen keeps redirecting it back. She miscarried shortly after. Carey later recalled the experience, saying she'd had a hard time grappling with the aftermath. She hadn't been ready to tell anyone because she had already suffered a miscarriage, and she didn't enjoy that moment. In 2008, that clip aired without incident. Nobody wrote articles about it. Nobody called it what it was. It was daytime television. It was just Ellen being Ellen. That's important. Not because the audience was wrong, but because the framing that surrounded it, the dancing, the music, the warmth, the generous giveaways, made it nearly impossible to see what was actually happening. The context was doing the work of an alibi. In 2012, Ellen invited Taylor Swift onto the show, and then produced a scoreboard with photos of Taylor's ex-boyfriends. Asking Taylor Swift about her ex-boyfriends was a standard interview tactic in 2013, but DeGeneres took it a step further. Swift sat through it. She laughed. Because you laugh on a talk show. Because the audience is expecting you to laugh. Because the alternative, saying I don't want to do this, feels impossible in that setting. The audience laughed too. It was fine. It was entertainment. Or it was a person using the leverage of their platform to make a guest do something the guest clearly didn't want to do. Depending on when you watched it, it was one or the other. There are others. A pattern, visible only in aggregate. Kylie Jenner having her braid grabbed and swung without consent. Drew Barrymore being shown a photo of her 6-year-old daughter and asked, "So, you started drinking around that age?" A fan who painted an elaborate portrait of Ellen and Portia, hours of work, a gift of real devotion, and was mocked for it. Audience members subjected to embarrassing Facebook photo segments. Guests who came on with phobias and found those phobias waiting for them on camera set up as the punchline. Individually, each clip had an excuse. It's comedy. It's television. Nobody was really hurt. They signed up for it. But watch them all in sequence, and a different question emerges. Who benefits from all of this? Every time, in every clip, there is only one person laughing from behind the camera. The clip that changed everything arrived quietly. Dakota Johnson was on the show to promote a film. Standard visit. The kind that happened thousands of times. Ellen mentioned Johnson's birthday, then added, almost casually, that she hadn't been invited to the party. Johnson's demeanor stiffened. Actually, no. That's not the truth, Ellen, she said. You were invited. Last time I was on the show, last year, you gave me a bunch of trouble about not inviting you, but I didn't even know you wanted to be invited. The audience made a noise. Somewhere between laughter and a sharp intake of breath. When DeGeneres continued to express skepticism, Johnson encouraged her to ask everybody, referring to the show's staff. An off-camera crew member confirmed that DeGeneres had in fact been invited, but was out of town. Ellen acknowledged it. Oh, yeah, I had that thing. The moment lasted less than 90 seconds. And then the interview continued. And then it was over. And then the internet got to it. Something had happened on that stage that people couldn't quite name at first. A guest had corrected Ellen. Publicly. Calmly. Without crumbling. And Ellen had been caught. Not in a lie exactly, but in something adjacent to it. A pose. A performance of victimhood. I wasn't invited. That turned out to be untrue. The exchange, particularly Johnson's response, "That's not the truth, Ellen," circulated widely on social media and became a viral meme. It was initially received largely as an awkward but humorous interaction. But notice what the internet kept returning to. Not the humor. The honesty. In a setting where guests were expected to be charming and pliable, someone had simply told the truth. And it felt electric. Almost transgressive. Why? A few months later, a comedian named Kevin T. Porter posted a tweet. He described Ellen DeGeneres as notoriously one of the meanest people alive, and then asked his followers to share their stories. He received over 2,000 replies. Now, it's worth being precise here. Anecdotes on Twitter are not evidence. They are not vetted. They cannot all be verified. But quantity tells you something. When over 2,000 people respond to a single tweet, not with outrage or surprise, but with recognition, with finally, someone said it, that's not a scandal breaking. That's a secret surfacing. It turns out DeGeneres' reputation in Hollywood wasn't a deep, dark secret. It was discussed routinely behind the scenes, which is why an emboldened Porter could send such a tweet in the first place. Hollywood knew. Guests knew. The question was never what was happening. The question was why no one said so. There is a reason nobody said so. Ellen's show was valuable. Enormously, structurally valuable. At its height, during 1 week in February 2014, Ellen averaged nearly 4.6 million total viewers. For a film studio trying to launch a movie. For a musician with an album dropping. For a brand seeking daytime reach, the Ellen appearance was a currency. You didn't complain about the mint that was printing your money. And, beyond commerce, there was something more invisible at work. Ellen had a particular immunity. She was a pioneer. The first openly gay lead character in American network television. A woman who had sacrificed her career in 1997 to come out publicly and lost everything, and then rebuilt herself from zero. In April 1997, DeGeneres publicly came out as a lesbian on the cover of Time magazine with the words, "Yep, I'm gay." The Puppy episode became the first American network TV show to feature an openly gay lead character. That history was real. The courage it took was real. And for a long time it functioned as a shield. To criticize Ellen felt, to many people, like attacking not just a person, but everything she had fought for. Like choosing the wrong side of history. The kindness brand made one shield. The pioneer status made another. Together, they formed something close to armor. Until the armor didn't fit anymore. In July 2020, BuzzFeed News reported on allegations from former employees who described a culture of fear, systemic racism, and other forms of intimidation and bullying on the show. One former staffer described DeGeneres' "be kind" mantra as Bull's ******, that only happens when the cameras are on. That sentence. Read it again. Only happens when the cameras are on. And suddenly, the entire archive of the show looked different. The clips weren't evidence of harmless television anymore. They were evidence of a performance. Every dancing entrance. Every heartfelt giveaway. Every "be kind" sign-off. The cameras were always on. A second BuzzFeed article, compiled after speaking with 36 former employees, brought to light more serious allegations, senior producers accused of sexual misconduct and harassment. Warner Brothers launched an internal investigation. Although the investigation found no evidence of systemic racism, the show ultimately cut ties with senior producers Ed Glavin, Kevin Lehman, and John Norman. Ellen addressed it, on air, at the start of season 18. During her monologue, DeGeneres apologized for poor behavior and vowed that difficult conversations had taken place and necessary changes had been enacted. It was the highest-rated season premiere in 4 years. And then the audience left. There's something worth examining in how Ellen chose to apologize. She released a statement reading, "On day 1 of our show, I told everyone in our first meeting that the Ellen DeGeneres Show would be a place of happiness, no one would ever raise their voice, and everyone would be treated with respect. Obviously, something changed, and I am disappointed to learn that this has not been the case." Read it carefully. Something changed. I am disappointed to learn. She positioned herself as someone who had been failed by the culture around her, by circumstances she had not been aware of, not as someone who had built that culture or been responsible for it. The common criticism: DeGeneres minimized serious allegations and made herself the victim. Audiences felt she didn't get it, that she failed to take full accountability. The apology performed remorse, but it didn't perform responsibility. And audiences, particularly the audiences who had spent 20 years being told that kindness was the highest virtue, recognized the difference. Because Ellen had taught them to. That was the final irony. Her own moral framework, applied to her, found her wanting. Despite the apology, the damage was done. Ellen lost more than 1 million viewers over the 6 months that followed, averaging just 1.5 million viewers per show, down from a 2.6 million average over the same period the previous year. In May 2021, she announced the show would end. She told The Hollywood Reporter, "When you're a creative person, you constantly need to be challenged, and as great as this show is, it's just not a challenge anymore." Public perception. Many viewed the creative challenge explanation as face-saving. By the finale, the show had lost nearly 50% of its audience since its peak. The total decline from the height of the show to its final season was a near halving of viewers. The final episode aired in May 2022. She avoided addressing the workplace allegations directly. She framed her legacy around LGBTQ+ progress, which was real and earned and true, but also incomplete. Here is what's strange about that moment. Scholars and journalists who examined the clip noted that the interview wasn't nearly as vicious or confrontational as people later portrayed it. Johnson wasn't attacking. Ellen wasn't exposed. And yet, the exchange is likely what Johnson is best known for among Generation Z audiences, and some publications have ranked it as one of the most memorable moments in talk show history. Why did that clip land the way it did? Because it made visible something the audience had been feeling but hadn't been able to name. The clips had always been there. The Mariah Carey champagne moment. The scoreboard with Taylor's exes. The grabbed braid. The mockery dressed as comedy. Individually, each one had an excuse. But together they told a story. A story about power. About who gets to make someone uncomfortable on national television and call it entertainment. About the gap between what someone says they are and how they actually behave when the cameras are facing the right direction. The clips didn't end Ellen's career. They were always just there, waiting for the audience to be ready to see them. Ellen DeGeneres retired from entertainment in 2024. She and her wife moved to England at the end of that year. She delivered a stand-up special on Netflix, her first attempt at explaining the headlines on her own terms. Even Variety, usually gracious, noted it seemed more an act of ego than reckoning. She told audiences on the tour, "This is the last time you're going to see me." Whether that's true remains to be seen. But what is already true, what the archive makes clear, is this. The end of Ellen's career was not a sudden cancellation. It was a slow recognition. The kind that happens when you've been shown something 1,000 times, and then one day, because of one small clip, one 5-word sentence, one woman declining to play along, you finally see it. The fall wasn't just about a few bad headlines. It was a slow burn, fueled by years of internal issues, a growing chasm between Ellen's on-screen image and the reality behind the cameras. When the values someone espouses don't align with their internal practices, trust erodes, and the foundation, no matter how solid, can crumble. She told us to be kind. For a long time, we believed her. Then we watched the clips again.